Board of Education opened the special meeting at 6 p.m. on August 24th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Susan Smith present.
Jesus again present.
C.J. Johnson present.
Carol Peden present.
Martin Rex Keziora present.
Robert Verdi present.
Susanna Lopez present.
Maribel Maddox present.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Kizior, can you lead us to in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yeah, would you please stand and place your right hand over your heart? And I'm facing the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we're on to item B, public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak to any item on the agenda may do so at this time. Individual speakers shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes on any agenda item. The Board of Education shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 21 minutes. Board Bylaw 9323, Section B, Section 5. Per Board Bylaw 9323, twice the allotted time will be provided to a member of the public utilizing a translator. Claudia, do we have any public comments on agenda items?
We have one public comment. We have Adrienne Lamoth, and she will be speaking. Ms. Lamoth, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. The timer will start and you have 3 minutes to speak, ma'am. You will hear a beep when you have 30 seconds left. Ready?
Okay,
begin.
thank you. Good evening, Dr. Keziora and board members. I have 4 questions for you tonight, so I'll just go ahead and go through them. First, I'd like to inquire about how the amounts were determined for the cost of the COVID testing and contact tracing. Secondly, I'd like to know of the $40,343,750 that has been allocated to Moreno Valley Unified School District as part of the emergency relief funds, of which $4,043,475 have been apportioned. Are funds only now being approved for testing and contact tracing? And if not, if funds were previously allocated, where can community members go to view those budget items? Thirdly, do you have an estimate on when these contracts are scheduled to be implemented, specifically looking at the contact tracing? And then finally, as a parent and a staff member, I feel it's imperative that we have transparent and timely information regarding COVID tracing and notification. What procedures is the district currently considering changing or implementing with the hiring of a dedicated contact tracing capability? Currently, general notifications of COVID cases or those with COVID symptoms are not being distributed to staff and parents through Parent Connect. Contact tracing is also limited as it appears to only apply to students and staff who were either reported or known to be in proximity to those who test positive. And our schools are reliant on parents and guardians with students who are present or absent with symptoms to report those cases to the school. So in these incidents, contact tracing does not really happen, even if the student was on campus prior to being home and being absent from school. So that's a significant concern that I have based on 2 recent incidents that I've witnessed. Additionally, I suggest going forward that the district implement procedures that include contacting parents, guardians, students who have been out sick and asking about their COVID status. Additionally, checking to see if schools are sending out general notifications to parents and staff, preferably through Parent Connect, about any COVID cases at school sites would fall in line with the district guidance found on page 5 of the COVID-19 prevention program, Moreno Valley Unified School District, which states, and I quote, "There are 2 types of notifications employees or students may receive when there is a positive case. General notification. This is the most common notification. Once a positive case has been reported at a specific work site, a general notification email will be sent." Dr. Keziora, tonight in your message that went out to parents and staff, you spoke about the new COVID dashboard, which I really appreciate, and I think that'll be a valuable addition to keeping families and staff informed. So thank you for that. If these procedures, however, that are outlined in that document for the COVID-19 prevention program are outdated, I ask that the board consider re-implementing them or working through the new COVID contact tracing contract to implement it. Transparent and timely notifications and tracing will not only help staff members, but parents to feel the district and board is doing everything within their power to keep our community safe. Students in other communities are dying. Schools in other states are closing. I grew up here in Moreno Valley. After 20 years in the military, I came back to Moreno Valley to teach. And currently my child is enrolled in Moreno Valley. We
Ms.
owe it
Lamont?
to our community. Yes, ma'am. I just have like 30 seconds if I can finish.
Can I get, I would need approval from our board
Okay.
president.
That's fine.
I feel we owe it to our community to keep our most precious gifts as safe as we can. Thank you very much for everything you do. I know you all are working hard. I know you care about our students, and I know that we can do better on this specific issue. I'll take your responses offline. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. We do appreciate your feedback. All right, now we're moving on to item C on the consent item, approval of contract list number 3. Ms. Lopez, can you help us out with this item, please?
Yes, thank you. I just want to give you a little bit of background. The state issued a state public health officer order that was dated August 11th that applies to public school districts in the state. Within this order, it states that districts must verify vaccine status of all of its employees. For employees that are not fully vaccinated, they must be tested at least weekly. The contracts that we are presenting to you this evening would help us begin this process of putting together the procedures in place that are needed in order to meet the deadline of October 15th. Dr. Kadzura has reviewed the specific contracts with you, and just to quickly summarize, one is currently being used, which is that first one, which is needed in case we need rapid test. The second one, the InterHealth Laboratory for contact tracing to assist with that process. InterHealth Laboratory is for the testing services that would be implemented to make sure that we meet the guidelines. And then RO Health is the one related to the contact tracing. And so these are the 3 contracts that we have for you this evening, again, in order to ensure that we meet the deadline of October 15th.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. And of course, before we go on to the board for questions, comments, or concerns, I do want to just clarify that on the agenda, C1 was stated as approval of purchase order list number 3. That was an error. It is actually approval of contract list number 3. So just want to make sure the public is aware that we are working on addressing the item of approval of contract list order or list number 3. And so just making sure that that's clarified. Board, is there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this item?
So I have a question. It looks like item 1 and item 2 are both testing. So do these work together, or how do they work when it looks like item 1 is testing and item 2 is also testing?
You are correct, Mrs. Smith. They are both testing services. The first one is one that we are currently utilizing already. The plan is to, whenever possible, use InterHealth Laboratory, but not knowing the number of employees and our students that will need to be tested, we wanted to make sure that we also had a backup in place. And so that's why we have both of them on here with not to exceed amounts, because we don't know specifically the volume that will be used. And so this will give us some flexibility to make sure that we're in compliance for the testing.
So the item 1 is just a backup for InterHealth Laboratory.
It will become a backup once InterHealth begins, yes.
So when do we need to start the testing?
Right now, the testing that is needed is for in cases where there has already been possible exposures. And so those are the students or staff that could be tested right now. As far as the weekly testing for all employees, I know that Dr. Verdi is working closely with both unions, working on some MOUs for that. We know the deadline of when things need to be implemented, but I know that the plan would be to start prior to that to make sure that we go through and work out any kinks that we find along the way.
And part of that will be finding out then who has been vaccinated, because the testing is just for people that are non-vaccinated, right?
Correct, unless they are showing or have any symptoms, then they would be encouraged to test.
That was my only question.
Ms. Smith, any other questions, comments, or concerns on this item? Mr. Johnson, you're on mute.
Yeah, who does the encouraging? Their manager or who does that?
Well, we work closely. We have a decision tree that our COVID team, which right now is comprised of Public Information Office, as well as the Director of Risk, working with HR. And depending on the exposure, again, those would be the circumstances where they would be, but you don't force them, right? So that's where the encouragement comes into play. But we also, anytime that there's symptoms, again, encourage to test. And so these would be the options available to them.
Okay, some symptoms. Okay, thank you.
So my only question is related to the timing of these contracts. So for example, the second one, $39 per test, and this is going to be implemented for the entire school year, right? Well, this is going to be in place for the entire school year. But if at some point in time, the authorities change direction and they say this is going to stop December 31st, for example, then that there will be a modification to these contracts.
And
Right.
that's correct. And that's why we wanted to structure the contract, because right now we know that based on the information we have, they are saying for those that are not vaccinated, weekly testing at a minimum, and not knowing the number of employees that would be tested. And then secondly, not knowing how long. We know that the order is in place as of October 15th. I didn't really see an end date, and we know that, information can change. And so we wanted to have that flexibility to have the contracts not commit us to a specific number of tests, but more a dollar amount per test.
Are we running the risk? I'm sorry?
I just said, I think that's good.
Are we running the risk of running low on the funding available?
Well, right now, the funds that have been allocated, the different types of ESSER funds, we know that the testing and the contact tracing are all allowable expenses. The other piece is that we will have a contract in place with these organizations, but there also are opportunities where people can go with their providers, and especially if symptoms are displayed, I know that the insurance still covers that. And so we don't know exactly what that dollar amount will be. I think at the beginning, it's going to give us a better indication of what we can plan for, and then we'll just have to revise our budget at the time. But for now, the funds that have been allocated have been for this purpose. And we know that at least for the 3-year commitment, those funds would be available. I'm sure that if the dollar amounts were to change or it becomes really high, I think you're going to see a lot of districts probably bringing it up at a higher level with legislators about the level of funding if we were to be in that position down the road. I think more advocacy would be needed.
That's good to know. So we're going to have to keep an eye as we go, so that if there's a need, like you just mentioned, that we need to work with the upper level to adjust the funding from those sources, right?
Correct.
So that would be I guess a regional or even a statewide effort.
Mhm.
All right, thank you so much.
I had one more question. I see this applies to students too. We're not required to test students at this time, are we? Aren't we just required to test staff?
That is correct. That order applies to staff. However, in cases where there are possible exposures of students, they would also be able to utilize this service.
Okay, but we're not going to regularly test students then.
That's not in the guidelines right now.
Okay.
And Mike, I guess not a question, but more of a comment. And of course, Dr. Zor or Ms. Lopez, if you can clarify, I would imagine that this is contact tracing piece or contract is in this contract list because it will create more efficiency and effectiveness as it relates to contact tracing through our district, correct?
That is correct. I think in having communication with other districts, there's several districts that already have this in place. And so I think it would provide just more timely, greater accountability, and then a group that is strictly just focused on the contract tracing versus a group that has this as an additional duty, because this isn't really something that we can, delay or say we'll get to tomorrow. This is something that requires our immediate attention. And we just feel that this would provide the best service for that.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. That makes perfect sense. And I just want to, thank you all and the cabinet and Dr. Kizior for the work that you all are doing regarding this contact tracing, because I know it does take a lot of work, and it has to be on the top priority of the work that you do on a daily basis. And it is certainly a heavy lift. Thank you for the work that you guys are doing on this important issue. Or do you guys, anybody else have any more comments, questions before we move on to entertain a motion?
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, go for it, Mr. Holguin.
I move that we approve So I move that we approve the consent agenda item as presented.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second by Ms. Smith and a motion by Mr. Holguin. Roll call, please.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Holguin,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Peden.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Dr. Kizior, do you have any final comments before we move on to the next item, which is adjournment?
Just thank you.
All right, sir, that's good enough. On to adjournment. With no further business to come before the Board of Education, the special meeting is adjourned at 6:17 p.m.